Now it is my distinct privilege to introduce our distinguished guest for the day, a luminary in the field of law, Honorable Justice Chelameswar. Justice Chelameswar has had a remarkable career, leaving an indelible mark on the Indian legal landscape. With an illustrious legal career as a Chief Justice of Kerala High Court and the Gauhati High Court, and as the second most senior judge of the Supreme Court of India, Justice Chelameswar's legacy is marked by groundbreaking judgments, including the NJAC and IT Act 2000 verdicts. He's played a pivotal role in upholding the Haryana Panchayati Raj Amendment Act 2015 and ensuring Aadhaar's impact on basic services. We extend a warm welcome to you, sir, and look forward to your unparalleled insights on the subject.
I thank the Center for Civil Society for summoning me this evening. I really thank them for the reason. The last 10 years of my life, I perhaps became increasingly cynical. The only company where I felt comfortable was a company of youngsters, because I saw a hope. And then when I see so many young people here, I really feel happy. Therefore, I thank the organizers for calling me this evening. Also, at the outset, I must apologize to the gathering and make it clear up front. This evening, I'm suffering from a terrible toothache, so therefore, there could be a little incoherence in my speech. You'll forgive me for that. I'm on medication. Nonetheless, toothaches can be very, very annoying and troublesome. Now, I'm supposed to give the keynote address this evening, and from the material provided to me about the research undertaken by this organization, I noticed certain features. My views on some of these matters may not be completely in tune with the findings recorded in these research papers. But I'll give my reasons. It's open for you to agree with me, disagree with me, that's a different matter. So long as we believe in democracies, if we are really democratic, we must always learn to respect the other point of view. Now, there are various items which have been mentioned in the brief given to me regarding the research and the findings recorded by the researchers. I'll deal with them briefly. By the way, Sanskriti, what is the time allotted to me? Please tell me. What is the time allotted to me? 25 minutes. Thank you. Now, when I read these findings, whether the understanding of the civil society of the Constitution is the same as the understanding of the Constitution by the legal fraternity of, loosely speaking, legal fraternity of this country. Well, apparently, it's strictly not the same. But then the question is, I don't know how many of the members gathered here, boys and girls, or girls and boys, as you may put it, whatever they were, are students of law. I am not very sure. But at least those of you who have some knowledge of, even if you are not a lawyer as such, some idea about how the legal systems function. Well, we lawyers tend to define things first. All legislation starts with a definition clause. So when we talk about civil society and the views of the civil society, What is that civil society you are talking about? Any analysis, any data collection, any statistical information collected depends upon the sample which we choose. So when you are collecting views and analyzing them and then recording conclusions, what is that civil society which you are referring to? Please remember, without meaning any disrespect to anybody sitting here or not sitting here, India is not Delhi. India is not Delhi. India is not only urban India. Urban India is also India, no doubt about it. But India is not only urban India. Though, as things change, there is a study which says by 2050, 50% of the world's population would live in huge urban agglomerations. What we call villages today, quite a large number of them would be obliterated from the face of the earth. More and more migration takes place towards the urban areas for various reasons. You can analyze youngsters, economic, technological, various reasons, historical reasons. But even by 2050, 50% or a little less than 50% would still live in rural areas, not only in this country, world over. When world over means may not be US, because US, the history is totally different. It's a new country, relatively new country in the human history. So therefore, when you're talking about the civil society, are the views collected and findings recorded here are views arrived at after taking into account the opinions or the data collected from rural India or not is a question which kindly examine. Second thing is the understanding of the rights. I'll just give you one example from your own research paper, the note circulated to me. It is the finding when it comes to the question of freedom of speech. It is in the brief given to me, it is stated, people were pro-freedom to speech for themselves, but not for others. While freedom to speech and expression was highly valued by individuals for themselves, it was also most restricted when it came to others. This is the finding. I have not said anything. This is the finding recorded by your own research. Apparently, there is a huge contradiction in this statement. A system, when you create a system is meant for everybody. If there is to be freedom of speech, it must apply to everybody who is governed by the system in equal measure. It can't be one thing for me and something different, something less than what I have for others in this society, in which case we are not democratic, forget about anything else. It is, this is what, but one thing, in practice, this is what happens most of the time, that is the human problem, human nature. In fact, there's a famous, one of those famous statements in law, when the American Constitution was being drafted, there was an intense debate. 3 public men published a series of articles which were later regarding the structure of the Constitution that was to be brought into force in US and all things incidental to that. All those papers eventually were published under the title The Federalist. That was the title of the book. In one of those papers, my memory is also slowly fading with age. If I remember right, it's paper 9. There's a profound statement. It says, If men were to be angels, well, my dear ladies, forgive me, that's what is written. He didn't say woman. Law in law, men always included women. Anyway, if men were to be angels, no government would be required to rule them. If angels were to rule men, no law would be required to guide them. Therefore, there is a need to law, and a higher law is constitution, which contains some more permanent, relatively more permanent prescriptions. So therefore, if it is our understanding, our conclusion on the collection of the data, that people prefer to have absolute freedom of speech when it is their speech, and not so much of freedom for other speech, apparently our own whole understanding of this freedom is skewed. This is not to find fault with the recipient, but this obviously the problem is with the samples chosen. Now, even if a larger sample were to be taken, human nature is such, perhaps everybody would wish to have the same system. But then that is certainly not good for any one of us. It's all fine when everything is going in our favor well. But the day when things go against us, then we realize the importance of this. In fact, I can give you one personal experience. Long back in 1999 or so, when I was still a young judge in this country in a high court, the original Andhra Pradesh High Court, now divided into two, there was a matter before me. A particular organization wanted to have a huge rally and a public meeting. Then, as the law requires, the organizers made an application to the police commissioner of Hyderabad city, seeking permission to, conducting any rally or a meeting requires some permission. They made an application to the commissioner of police seeking permission. For whatever reason, the permission was rejected. Challenging the rejection, those people came to the High Court and the matter was listed before my bench. Full detail, this is a reported judgment. If you are interested, you can read it later. Sorry. I had to hold that people in this country have a right to take a procession in streets and also hold a meeting in public places. I didn't invent this right. There was an old judgment of the Supreme Court by then, 1973 Supreme Court, Himatlal versus Commissioner of Police, Ahmedabad. It was reported in AR 1973, page number I don't remember today. There the Supreme Court, the similar question came there. The Supreme Court said, if the Constitution guarantees a fundamental right of association and another fundamental right of free movement throughout the territory of India, both these things conjunctively confer a right to take a procession, because procession is nothing but an assembly in motion. Association is an assembly. Therefore, a procession is an assembly in motion. If they have a right to assemble, they have a right to take a moving assembly. Therefore, they have a fundamental right. And then, of course, something happened. Therefore, I had to follow the law sitting in the High Court, at least sitting in the Supreme Court. Perhaps I could have taken a different view, if really. But I had no choice. I know the government of the day on that particular day. For that matter, any government would be unhappy with this kind of a judgment. No government would be happy with the liberties of the people. Every government would be unhappy with the liberties of. Everybody wants the same proposition on a larger scale. Governments want, yes. People talk about democracy. Every political party, I am not naming any particular political. Every political party talks about democracy, and they make grand announcements about their commitment to the Constitution, their respect for the Constitution, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to practice, we have seen every successive government at every level, national level, state level, resort to blatant violations of the basic constitutional norms. In fact, while introducing me, Sanskriti was mentioning about that 66A judgment, Information Technology Act. If I remember right, the dates, it was in 2013, we rendered the judgment, I and Justice Nariman. And 10 years later, still cases are being registered under Section 66A. Just about a year back also, I noticed in the bar and bench there is a write-up saying that Supreme Court frowned upon this practice of registering cases under 66A. Therefore, well, law says everything is fine on paper. In implementation, how it happens is the question. So therefore, when we are talking about civil society's understanding of the Constitution, there are 2-3 items I'll touch and leave it there. One is, one of the findings is groups highly value the right to property. There is a huge history of this right to property in this country. I'm talking about 1950 onwards. I'm not talking about the period of Ikshvakus or Shatavahanas or Mauryas. I'm talking about 1950 onwards, what happened. Initially, the Constitution contained an express provision, rather two provisions, 19(1) F or G, gentlemen, the right to, fundamental right to property, F or G. One is trade and one is F. I told you in the beginning, the caveat, age is having its toll on me. Now, and another is Article 31, which said that no person shall be deprived of the property save by authority of law and for compensation. Now, both these provisions were deleted later in 42nd Amendment. A huge political debate went on in this country for a period of 27 years, 1950 to 1977. Some 29 amendments till then, later many more amendments came, but these 29 amendments basically dealt with the fundamental right to property and matters incidental to. And there were strong positions taken on either side. In fact, I remember when that famous judgment of Keshwananda Bharati, that case was going on. It was reported, I was still in the law college those days, I was not a lawyer by then. It was reported widely in the newspapers. One of the honorable judges of the then judges of the Supreme Court, I believe, commented, addressing Mr. Palkhiwala, who argued the matter. Mr. Palkhiwala, 55 days of argument for this dirty right of property. That was one perception of those days. And, well, that was that period, it was the high point of Indian socialism. Everybody was a socialist. The same Mr. Palkhiwala, in 74 or 75, every year after the budget, he used to deliver a lecture in Bombay Shanmugananda Hall. And some of those lectures were collected and published in the form of a book much later. We the People, the 2 volumes, We the People and We the Nation, I think. 74, if I remember right, I was still in the law college. He opened the speech, his speech on the budget analysis. He said, in this country, socialism means many things to many people. And for some, it simply means a berth in the Union Cabinet, he said. Well, look, that was the high point of socialism those days. Well, any amount of debate is possible. For a period of almost 60 years, starting with 1917 till 1990, maybe 70 years, half of the world very vibrantly debated the benefits of the communist theory. Even today, there are people who swear by Karl Marx and the theory and this thing. But I'm afraid that the debate is not so vigorous and so enthusiastic as it was those days. I don't know. I never traveled to China. My first son went to China a few times, some business connection. So he told me he had seen villas, private villas, with 40 bedrooms in communist China. Even in India, in capitalist America, 40-bedroom villas perhaps are not a regular feature. So I'm not making any comment about any one of these things. I'm only making statements of fact. So this debate goes on, but point is, when the Indian Constitution guaranteed it or subsequently those provisions were omitted, the property still continues to be there in private ownership. And after the right to property ceased to be a fundamental right under the Constitution, the class which owns huge property has really enlarged. We have many, many billionaires in this country. Prior to 1950, you used to have Maharajas, Zamindars, so on and so forth. All of them are gone. A new class has come into existence. They're still... no, point is, I'm not against anybody making money owning property. But question is, it's a society. When we travel in the streets of Delhi, forget about anywhere it's possible. Right now we are in Delhi. We see a lot of people sleeping under the bridges. We see a lot of young children. Just now I was watching. Small child, maybe 10-year-old, hardly dressed, dirty rags, the traffic junction. There's no point in telling that child about the greatness of fundamental right to property. Human beings need food, a decent, dignified life. Until that is assured, this right to property, well, who are these people who are complaining about private enterprise and property and so on? And who are these people who are, there's a finding, people have expressed opinion about the government policies of freebies. Who are these people? People who are comfortable otherwise. How did their comfort come? I'm not denigrating anybody, but just make an analysis. All those people who believe, or we believe, that they have worked hard to make that money, please remember any one of these industries, any one of the industries, big, small, medium, any one of the industries, substantially, if not 100%, at least 90% of them, built up their industries and their wealth on public money, by borrowing monies from public institutions. They are honest people, hardworking people, they did an honest job and then they multiplied that money, that's a different matter. But the basis is provided by the society, that public money. And if they believe that freebies should not be given to these poor children on the streets who have no means of livelihood, well, how right it is as human beings to think like that is one question. Forget about those fine words, philosophy of humanity and charity. In Hyderabad, I'm sure in other parts of I know my acquaintance with that part of the country is more because I was born there. There is an organization, generally we, all of us, I don't speak here as a former judge, as a member of the civil society. We have a very wrong opinion about police people in this country. Policemen or women, fortunately, not many women are there in police department. Mostly it's men. Policemen are supposed to be less human than others, which need not necessarily be true. And if some of them are really not very human in their attitudes or behavior or approach, who is responsible for it is a different matter which requires a huge debate. But anyway, that's not besides the point. Hyderabad, the old Andhra Pradesh state, combined Andhra Pradesh state, now it's Telangana, this part of Hyderabad. The police department runs what is otherwise normally called as orphanage, a project for street children. At that point of time, I'm talking about 1999 or 2000, an officer who was in charge of running that center, an officer known to me personally, invited me for a particular occasion to visit that place. I was pleasantly surprised. I was very happy to see the place. About 1,000 children were there, reasonably well taken care of. Our notions of these orphanages, some of these things we see movies, and sometimes even otherwise also we know. It is one of those reasonably well maintained home where about 1,000 children were there. They were not only fed, some reasonably decent educational facility was created. This was the thing. After I visited that place, naturally I had to revise my own views about the police department and their functioning. I asked the officer who invited me, please tell me who started it and why was it started? And the gentleman told me he was one of the founders of that organization some long back. He told me, in Chelameswar, there are about 10,000 street children in Hyderabad on that day. If 100 of them become criminals eventually, nobody in this city is safe. All those people living in these big mansions, Jubilee Hills, Banjara Hills, mansions worth about 5 crores, 10 crores, nobody is safe. At least it's in the enlightened self-interest of this society to take care of the children. If not anything much higher, a much higher values is to forget about it. Their own interest to make sure that they can sleep peacefully and safely in their houses. And policing is ultimately, this is part of policing. How to ensure the safety of the society is the job of the police, in theory. And not only catching a thief, if I can prevent theft, if I can prevent somebody becoming a thief or an offender or a lawbreaker, I have done my policing well. This is the theory. This requires some enlightened mind to understand what is the scope of policing. Now, the point in this, what I'm trying to say is, when we are talking about freebies, in a country, in a world where there are huge economic disparities, where a good percentage of people go to bed without a proper meal, if the rest of the society doesn't take care of it, governments which are representative bodies do not bother about that, and we denounce anybody denouncing the system of freebies will have to think twice before making a statement and think of their own safety. Now, I do understand. Where does it end? Providing basic needs, yes, perhaps nobody can quarrel. Should not quarrel at least. If the state governments are providing food security, because some states have, in fact, my own home state, Andhra Pradesh, some 40 years back, there was a chief minister, late Mr. N.T. Ramarao. He said, I'll give you rice for 2 rupees. He gave. 7, 8 years he was the chief minister. He made sure that everybody got, those deserving below a particular economic line, got rice at 2 rupees. He made sure. Many states have similar projects today. Though there was a criticism, those days saying that this man is squandering away the public money, state properties. And then when Mr. Amartya Sen writes, this kind of a thing is required in this country, he gets a Nobel Prize, we think that Amartya Sen is great, but N.T. Ramarao is not great, that's a different matter. But I am not denigrating Mr. Amartya Sen, I respect him hugely. The point is, if basic requirements, if governments and society do not care for the welfare of the people, basic welfare, food security. In my personal opinion, and I have quite a few friends in this country who believe the top priority for any government is to provide food security and medical attention to people. Now, afterwards, you start giving laptops, color TVs. Well, they are freebies. There can be many views on these matters. Okay. So therefore, yes, some of these things require a very intense debate. The reports are prepared, data is collected, but there can always be another aspect of the matter. And kindly don't mistake me when I say this. When you collect the data, I don't know. In fact, people talk about the Delhi and the problems of Delhi. Privatizing the garbage collection. Yes, I'll take 2 more minutes. Now, why is it happening? Because the official bodies are not able to perform these functions as efficiently as private bodies. But ultimately, what are these official bodies? You, me, your own brethren, your own kith and kin who man these bodies. So when it comes to performing certain public duty, as a civil society, our society is less enlightened. The whole idea is there. I want everything, but I don't want to perform any duty. Even if I perform, I don't do it wholeheartedly. That's where, just take one example. In the last 20 years, we have huge national highways, 4-lane, 6-lane, 8-lane roads. The idea is to create a more comfortable traffic flow. And it's my experience, perhaps I'm the oldest man in this hall today. I think so. I've traveled quite a lot in this. No, sir? You're older, is it? I'm running 71, sir. I've traveled quite a bit in this country. On every one of these huge roads, in every direction, the traffic flows. Whom do we blame in this? It's the civil society. And it's not, quite often, it's not, when this traffic is flowing in all wrong directions, large number of them are otherwise literate people. They are not illiterate people. Just don't care. We think we only have rights. We don't believe that we also have obligations to the society. That's where the problem is. I'm not saying that everything is wrong with the civil society, but these are all matters which we must address if we want to really improve the system. I think I'm running short of time. Thank you. Sorry if I've offended anybody in this process.